Hello and welcome to this latest in our series of Global Reviews webinars around UK financial services. I'm Rebecca Jennings. I am a Principal Client Advisor here at Global Reviews. And it's my role today to talk to you around the latest research we have on UK financial services, particularly with a focus on the Tesco Bank mobile experience, as part of our ongoing series of focusing down on brands in the UK market. So, as I just said, my name is Rebecca Jennings, and I'm Principal Client Advisor here at Global Reviews. I've been at Global Reviews some 8 or 9 years now. Previous to that, I was at Forrester Research. What I want to talk about this morning is a brief overview in terms of who Global Reviews are and essentially what the methodology here is. I'm going to talk about some of the results, particularly pertaining around the Global Reviews results around Tesco, and I'm going to talk about some of the implications for the brand and for other brands in the market. So that is our agenda today for the next half hour or so. Very quickly, the research that I'm going to be talking about is something called Fruition, that we have been running now for a few years in the UK, Australia, Ireland, and Canada, North America. It is a process whereby we involve both in-market consumers and our own expertise, our own review, our own audit, to give you as a brand a full 360 view of how people find brands in your market. What do they do in terms of looking for brands when they want mortgage, savings, car insurance, energy. We run this across a number of verticals in each of those territories. So we're talking particularly about financial services today, but we run across a number of other verticals as well. So in-market consumers in their own environment, they are tasked with going off to find a brand that suits their needs, and they will we track what they do as they do that. We can see all the click streams, we can see their searches, they answer some questions about how their preferences change from pre-research, during the research, at the end of the research, what kind of preferences they have for a brand in this market. So we can tell you how that happens, how consumers find brands in your market and why they make the decisions they do. Why do they choose your brand, or why do they not choose your brand? Then we go on to the consider and act phase of the Fruition research, which is where, again, these in-market consumers are now chunked into smaller groups. It's normally about 300 through the discover phase, and now we get to the consider phase. A group of those consumers are put onto each brand in the benchmark. There's normally about 8 to 10 brands in a benchmark. So there will be a group of consumers who go and do specific tasks on your website. They will be asked things like instant impressions. They're asked to go and actually find particular products, find particular features of products. So it might be an interest rate for a particular product, and then go through an application. So again, there's consumer insight into how all that happens on your website. But what also is happening here is a audit that we at Global Reviews conduct, the best practices audit of features and functions of how the site performs across that journey. So at each stage across the journey, we have insight both from the consumer saying, this is what I tried to do, this is why I failed, or this is what happened, this is what good, this is what was bad, and then we have the audit that goes on top of that. So there is both the consumer's insight and the audit insight across the journey. So as I say, the consumers give us verbal insight in terms of attitudinal questions, what's important to them, do they like the site experience they offer us, and say a voice of customer. But there's also the actual measured behaviour that we track them doing on your site, so completing tasks. We can measure their success, their satisfaction, their confidence as they do their tasks, how they navigate through the site, again, click streams, heat maps. So we can see very clearly what works and what doesn't, as these typical consumers go through a research, consideration and application process through your site. As I say, the other thing that overlays this and makes this, say, a very fully rounded insight with a tremendous amount of data is the best practice features and functions audit that we conduct internally at Global Reviews. So this is done by our internal experts here. We write this audit. It's our own audit based on our experience. Again, we've been doing this for about 15 years across a number of territories, a number of verticals, a lot of experience in figuring out what really is important to consumers. That's based on obviously consumer feedback, but obviously our own research and external research. We obviously keep abreast of everything that's going on in the customer experience research market. So the audit is a yes, no audit. It's not do we like the colour, is it pretty? It is very much does it have, does it do, does it have live chat, does the live chat have opening hours? So again, as we go through the experience on your own website and the other benchmark websites in the group, we have all this data from both what consumers are saying, doing, feeling about the experience, but also the actual yes, no audit at every stage. And that really gives us a huge wealth of data and insight into figuring out what really works and what doesn't in terms of the journey. But also it gives us quite a granular view into suggesting change. You've got hundreds of data points in this. We'll see a small snapshot of them today, and obviously as a client you could have access to all of them. But very much what this is about is enabling us to then make suggestions for practical and realistic things you can do to change and improve the experience. We're not about suggesting 18 months worth of huge redevelopment. This is about hopefully within 6 months. We normally run this study every 6 months, but within 6 months enabling you to make manageable change that would increase the experience for consumers and obviously ultimately increase the number of consumers that are choosing you as a final brand and going through that final application. So actionable insight, actionable results is what this is very much about. So let's have a look at some of the data that we've been gathering over the last few months. As I say, we do studies across a wide variety of financial services markets in the UK and other territories, and we run that roughly on a 6-monthly basis. We have, for example, in the UK running mortgages, current accounts, savings, investments, home insurance, car insurance, to name but a few. We also, as I say, run this across a number of other territories such as, or industries such as energy, retail, say different types of insurance, higher learning. So not only do you see as you go through, we have obviously examples from within the financial services industry, but sometimes the best example of a challenge might be from another brand. So we'll see later there's a really good example of how an energy company is using on the mobile to compare products. So that really helps too. So the wealth of experience we have across the different verticals. So let's have a think about just briefly some of the pathways to preference for some of the financial services markets that we look at in the UK and why this is particularly proving a challenge for Tesco as we go through their specific experience in these verticals. So as I say, we ask consumers a number of questions about their journey when they're coming to discover brands. So we ask them about their initial pre-research preference. So when they start an experience, when they start thinking about why would I look at this particular brand for mortgages, savings, investments, what is it that's driving my initial preference before I've done any research? And unsurprisingly, it's about trust. Key, really key, particularly in financial services markets, and obviously it's a key thing for anybody you interact with, but that percentage does change when we look at different verticals. Key in financial services, I trust this company. Also absolutely key is I'm a current customer. These two things obviously go so slightly hand in hand. If I'm a current customer and I'm happy with the experience, I'm going to gravitate to a brand I know and I have a good current experience with. Similarly, they provide good customer service. That's something you're not going to know or be sure about unless you have current or very recent experience with a brand. So The pre-research preference for these brands or these verticals is very much about what I already know and trust about brands, the existing relationship I have with a financial services company. Now, that's obviously immediately an issue for Tesco, because Tesco Bank, while they've been in the UK market for a while now, are very much still a new entrant, if you like, into a lot of these markets compared to the big brands like Barclays, Santander, Halifax, HSBC, Lloyds, etc. They are coming on the back foot of not having extensive experience with servicing people in terms of financial services. People know them for other things, but obviously the retail stores are not necessarily leveraging all they could do in terms of getting people to the financial services products. So it's even more important perhaps for a brand like Tesco's to offer a really, really good upfront mobile and desktop experience to get people in to say, okay, you do have something that's interesting. I'm going to spend some more time on this site trying to figure out whether you have a savings account, for example, that will actually suit my needs. It's really, really important for those first impressions and for the quick research, because if you put any obstacles in people's way, they're just going to say, okay, well, I'm not sure about the brand anyway. This is too hard. It's too difficult. I'm just going to go gravitate back to the brand I already have a mortgage with or already have a current account with. So that's the initial if you like, hurdle that we see here. When we look at our discovery phase research, as I say, we track how people's preference change. So this is the initial preference before research. We also ask them about how that might change through your research. Would you at some point put a brand on a short list? So having done a little bit of research, do you now have a short list of, it's normally 3 or 4 brands where you go, okay, I've done a little bit of research and they're kind of interesting, and I'll do a little bit more research about these brands. I haven't discounted them. And then we've obviously come on to final preference. And that is something we track across these financial services markets. So this is current accounts, for example. And we can see a few things going on here. It looks a little bit like a tube line map, I always think. But I think it's fairly clear what's going on. In the first column, we have brand recollection. So that's unprompted recollection before you've done any research. Tell me the 5 brands that spring to mind when you're thinking about researching current accounts. Top, Barclays. That obviously doesn't mean in the end they're going to choose them, but it means those brands really benefit from a very clear offering in terms of a brand in the market that people know of for this product. We then have initial preference, which is, again, based on top of your head, having done no research, who would you choose? And again, we're seeing Barclays do very well here. Then we get to shortlist, which is where people have done some research and they're thinking, okay, well, which of these brands will I spend a little bit more time thinking about? And we immediately start to see here some of the changes that go on when people actually do that research. So Santander, we've got highlighted here, for example. You can really see what's going on here. They are the best improver. So we've got Santander going from 4th at recollection, 6th at initial preference. But actually, by the time we finish, they're the top of the shortlist and the top of the top of the final preference. So some real changes going on when people actually get out there and do the research. Similarly, nationwide, seeing a really good uplift from 7th to 2nd from recollection through preference, shortlist, shortlist and final preference. In terms of Tesco Bank, 11th in recollection, down there with actually a whole bunch of other brands on about 1-2%, so very small, unspontaneous recollection as a current account provider. They actually got 0 initial preferences. Nobody said before I do my research they would be my first choice. They were the 9th brand on in terms of shortlist, and in terms of final preference, they actually came in at 11th. So a handful of people choosing them at the end, but very low at this point in terms of recollection, shortlist, and preference, and actually fell down from shortlist to preference. So you can immediately see there's something going on. They're getting onto shortlists and they're making people aware of the brand, but actually when people do a little bit more digging, they're being turned off. And again, similarly, we see something going on in mortgages, very similar. So this is the data from mortgages, same as I've just explained there in terms of recollection, preference, shortlist, final preference. Slightly different in terms of the movers and shakers here. We've got nationwide, absolutely first across the board here for mortgages in terms of recollection, initial preference, shortlist, and final preference. A few movements around there. We've got Santander again highlighted because it's going the other way this time, which is interesting. From third in recollection down in final preference down to 7th. In terms of, again, Tesco's, we're going from 10th in terms of spontaneous recollection through just 1% of people actually said they'd take it as their initial preference. So at least there was somebody here, but very small. 14th shortlist, 11th final preference. So making some traction, but again, obviously really suffering here and struggling to maintain their position in terms of getting from preference to initial preference to final preference, dropping down again. So something's going on that even when people are aware of the brand and they know the brand, they're not being convinced it's the brand that really suits their needs. So what is the lost opportunity? And then we're going to look at the actual website to see if we can figure out what's going on in some of these decisions that's being made, what's going on. Lost opportunity is our measurement of essentially the low-hanging fruit that you're losing. This is the percentage of consumers who shortlisted the brand who did not end up preferring it. So this is people who put you on the shortlist, put Tesco on the shortlist, put Santander on the shortlist, and said, okay, yeah, you're interesting, you've made the shortlist of 3 or 4 brands and spend a little bit more time with, and then I'm going to choose. This is the percentage the brand loses between that jump and final preference. And as you can see, Tesco actually having the worst lost opportunity in our markets for savings, for mortgages and current accounts. They're losing over 80% of consumers who put them on the shortlist. So that's a huge percent. They've actually got pretty much the worst in savings too. It's a little better than the other 2 markets. It's 66%, so 2/3. But it is, of the brands that we're looking at, the worst. So while Tesco are doing something in terms of perhaps SEO or PPC or comparison sites to get onto people's shortlists, what's happening then is that people are not choosing the brand. And that is an issue that's been an issue over quite some time now since we've been running Fruition. Fruition has been running in the UK for a couple of years. Previous to that, obviously there were previous iterations of the same kind of concept. Fruition is the most new and up-to-date methodology we have, which is obviously iterated on a every 6 monthly basis. So these are looking at final preferences over time for those key products, current accounts, mortgages and savings. And again, we're seeing the numbers are small, but we are seeing a decline rather than a increase for Tesco from all 3 of those markets, going from 3% current accounts in Q4 16 to 1% in the very latest study we've just run. Again, with savings from 11% down to 7%. And again, we've just seen that lost opportunity. So we're in a situation where Tesco's are very much suffering from low awareness. They are obviously then doing a little bit of getting onto shortlists through building awareness, but actually then they're losing the vast majority of people who put them on the shortlist between shortlist and final preference, because in many cases the web and mobile experience isn't delivering. It isn't convincing consumers that they have something that suit their needs. And that is absolutely vital when we look at final preference too. We looked at initial preference at the beginning. This is why you make your final preference post-research. Now, unsurprisingly, we still get, I trust this company, they're a reputable brand, I'm a current customer. Those things are very important. Financial services, again, we gravitate generally as consumers to companies we already engage with. We might move over time, but it takes quite a lot for us to shift the brand for these things. However, we also get strong drivers in here, particularly sort of the second tranche, are things like best account offers for my needs. Now that is, again, clearly a strong driver for particularly things like, let's say, current account and mortgages here. But you're not going to know that unless the website, the mobile site, enables you to find that quickly and easily. Their options are easy to understand. Again, we've got about 25% and 30% of people saying explicitly, yeah, that's one of the reasons I chose them. It was really easy for me to figure out what they've got. And again, that is absolutely, totally based on, does the site enable me to understand what you've got? Can I compare products? Can I figure out what is it of your multitudes of offerings in most cases actually suits my needs specifically? So now we're going to look at the actual experience on the mobile site, which might be hurting some of this final preference, and why Tesco are losing consumers at that final important shortlist to final preference point. So yes, as I said earlier, we're moving on to this consider phase. I talked about this earlier. This is where consumers and the audit go together at each stage of the journey. And it's always, I like this slide because it really just makes the point that when we're looking at this kind of experience and we're looking at creating the audit, fundamentally people spend most of their time on other sites, not yours. And actually in this market, they're doing that because other sites are more fun. This isn't something that's genuinely interesting or fun, or something they really want to be doing. They need a mortgage because they want to move house. They want a current account because they've just got a new job, and they've moved and they've got a job, and they want to have somewhere to put their salary. They need a savings account for their kids, university fees, or whatever it is. It's not fun. It's not interesting. It's not something they're having a load of fun doing. They do not want to spend their time relearning navigation or icons or the way a site works, the way your navigation works. They do not want to do that. They do not have the time. They will not give you the time to help them or make them do that. You cannot require them to do that. So it has to work the way that everything else works. That does not mean it needs to look the same as everything else, obviously. That does not mean you lose your brand feel and your brand identity, but it means that tools, it means that navigation, it means that icons, they need to work the way that people expect them to work. You cannot reinvent the wheel. So that is sort of the underlying rationale behind being able to create a best practice audit, obviously. We know how this stuff needs to work, and we know what needs to happen, so consumers can make the decisions they want to make, find the data they want to find. The overall score for the consider and act phase is all of that data. It's about 400 data points all rolled up into a score. Almost the least bit interesting of the whole thing is this final score, to be fair, because what it doesn't tell you is, as I was saying earlier, this is all about actionable insight, actionable results. As a whole, this number just gives you a benchmark of how you're going in the market against your competitors. What we really, obviously, the meat of this is drilling down, and we'll do that in a moment. But really just wanted to show here that some of the pain that Tesco are really suffering from is very much caused by the lack of usability of their particularly mobile site. They actually have the worst mortgages score in our market research, in our benchmark. In our recent benchmark, they actually score the worst of the mortgage set. They score largely the worst pretty much on savings, and somewhere in the middle on current accounts. But none of those scores are particularly high. We routinely get scores of 70, 74, 73, 74 in other markets. So they're scoring really quite poorly across these financial services markets, and particularly in mortgages and savings. So what's going on here? What are the particular pain that we're seeing here in this brand, and what can we do about it? As I say, there's about 400 data points in this. I'm not going to be able to show you all, and you don't want to see them right now anyway. So this just gives you a summary of those stages that we ask consumers to go through in the consider and act phase. So encouraging browsing. How does the site drag me in from the home pages, from the landing pages? Does it convince me that I should come in and figure out what's going on here? Do you have a product that suits my needs? Okay, I'm looking at the home page, I'm looking at the landing page, I'm thinking, yes, you probably do. Or, no, you don't. Comparing products is when we actually get into what have you actually got. Can I look at the different type of products you've got? Can I figure out whether one suits my particular needs? Understanding detail is when we start drilling down into, well, can we really figure out what's the APR on this particular product? What is the withdrawal time on this savings product? How do you present the detail of these financial services products? Can consumers find it easily? Getting help, it encompasses the whole types of help that consumers want these days, and we do find that they really demand a variety. It isn't that they just look for a phone number. They want to access to phone numbers, they want FAQ, they want live chat, In many cases, they want more sophisticated interaction, so perhaps using on Facebook Messenger, Twitter, for example. There's a whole host of support that needs to, again, particularly in financial services, be there. And then finally, we have purchasing the product who's actually going through the application. So what you've got here is just showing, for example, the Tesco Bank score at each of those stages compared to the best in our benchmark at each of those stages. And you can see there's some particular elements where Tesco are really below the top scorer, particularly around comparing products and getting help. So we're going to look at those two elements a little bit more in detail. So trying to match a product to needs, obviously in this market, is absolutely vital. You are not going to take out a mortgage until you're 100% certain it ticks all your boxes. You're not going to take out a savings account until you're 100% certain. There's no let's give it a punt and see whether it works and I'll give it back in 3 months' time if it doesn't. So it's absolutely vital that the site makes it really easy to go and find a product that suits my needs and compare it with other things that you've got, and to make sure this is the one I really want. So one of the tasks we ask consumers is to actually go and find a particular product. In this particular case, it was a mortgage rate option for first-time buyers with the lowest rate while having no fee. Now that exact task might change a little bit between brands depending on their offerings, but that's basically what we ask of each of these set of consumers to do. Overall, Nationwide lead this category for 57%, followed by NatWest. We actually found that none of our consumers found the right rate, found the right product on the Tesco site. None of them actually identified the correct product. Some of them thought they had, hence we have a satisfaction that's not 0. We had some people go, actually that was all right, but they found the wrong product. Evaluation is the percentage of consumers who didn't have a problem. So we found here that only 26% of people said, okay, I thought I found it fine, there was no problem. 74% said, no, actually there was a problem on the way. So you can see a couple of things going on here. Really difficult to find a specific product on the mobile site, and actually very confusing because we had a number of consumers who thought they had. So very much a problem here, both in terms of finding the product, really difficult navigation, but also perhaps worryingly, people coming away thinking, oh, I think I did find it. So could end up applying for the wrong thing and being extremely frustrated further down the process when it became obvious that this really wasn't going to suit their needs. In terms of consumer feedback, I said there was a lot of voice of customer here, as well as the audits. This is a classic example of how those two things sit side by side. And again, give us insight as to why consumers struggled. So here, this is a questionnaire that we ask consumers in terms of their agreement for a number of things around landing pages. So for example, we've got this page encourages me to dig deeper into what this brand offers. Lowest score, Tesco 6.8. This website is a site that looks like a site that caters for me, 7.1. Biggest scores we're getting 8.6 for Barclays. So you can immediately see the first impressions are poor, generally, or they're worse for Tesco than they are for the other brands. People are not being drawn into the site. People are not looking at the pages and going, yeah, I can spend a few more minutes here and find what I want. Similarly, when we actually get into the product detail audit, the yes/no questions that we do internally, not the lowest score, actually that's First Direct, but pretty much the lowest, the penultimately lowest score. Is that a phrase? Penultimately lowest? Anyway, score for is Tesco's. So they're not providing consumers with a great initial impression. When they get into trying to compare the mortgages, the detail's not there, the journey is complicated. So specifically, consumers told us that they found the fields confusing. They didn't know what to do. They didn't know where to go. It took a long time to find the information. They couldn't find what they were looking for. They just, in many cases, just gave up. There are a number of things going on here. The navigation isn't clear. It very much pushes you to trying the mortgage calculator before you've done anything else. This is not what consumers at this point wanted to do. That obviously is important at some point in the journey. For some users, that is the first thing they want to do. But it's important to understand that not all users want to do the same thing at the same time. We've got a bunch of users who want to go straight to the mortgage calculator. We've also got about half the market who want to go look at the rates first. You have to cater to both. You have to help users understand the market the way they want to understand the market. Yeah, and unfortunately, that's not what's happening here. Consumers are lacking confidence in what they were doing here, and that they couldn't find the product. So not easy to find, not good on a smartphone, very complicated, hard to follow, didn't give me the information. So people struggling and very lacking confidence in this journey. So what exactly do we think is going on? So, well, the landing page is very long. They're huge images. When we look at that picture of the pizza and the champagne, it's a nice concept, but it's taking up probably 70% of the page with absolutely nothing of use to the consumer at all. It's pushing useful stuff down the page. There's nowhere I can obviously go just to look at rates. Links to first-time buyers are more about the information about what can I do, what should I be doing, how does the process work. But there's no clear look at our great rates. Many of the call to actions actually fail to stand out on the page. They're small, they're really hard to click if you're using your big fat thumbs, which about 40% of us do. There's a load of small print here. It's really hard to scan. It's really hard to look at that page, that fixed rate mortgage page. Well, what do they actually really want me to know here? I don't know. There's loads of stuff going on here, and it's really difficult for me to scan and read and digest, particularly on the mobile form. If I get as far as the calculator, again, I've got a very long page of information. This is where a lot of the comments around I couldn't find it, it's not clear, come in, because it's actually not difficult to get to this page. But when you've got to it, it's really difficult to understand what you've got and to compare the products, because they're laid out in a long list down the page. There's no way of putting them side by side. There's no way of reordering, of sorting. It's just very, very easy at this point just to give up and say, okay, there's just too much information here. I can't do it. The information is not here, or to pick the wrong information. As we saw, we actually got nobody find the right piece, but actually the right data. But actually, we had about 60% of people think they did. So people are finding the wrong information on this page. It's overloading them with data. The cognitive overload from this page is just way, way too much. People cannot get to the salient information. So it's really, really struggling. It's also an issue with savings, and we're actually talking about mortgages here, but obviously we've been talking about savings and current accounts as we go through as well. But so it's just worth noting here, this is not an isolated issue around mortgages. Savings are very, very difficult to look at side by side as well, as you can see. Again, lots of small print, no way of ordering, no way of sorting. Very, very difficult to figure out what might suit my needs as a consumer here. And again, yeah, no small call to action. Really difficult, those little arrow buttons to click. So very unwieldy and very difficult to use. We saw earlier that the leader here is actually nationwide. This isn't perfect. Nothing's perfect. Nothing in the world is perfect. But they are doing some nice stuff here that does make it easier for consumers to get a quick view of, is there something that they're going to find appealing here, the right product. So instead of having a really long page with lots of imagery and lots of call to action, they just concertinaed it all up. There's a lot of information on this page, but it's all under concertinas, it's all under drop downs. So consumers immediately can see, where do I want to go? Then they've got links to our rates and calculators. So immediately you can go into whichever route suits you best. What do you think? Do you want to look at the rates? Do you want to look at the calculator for your specific how much you can actually borrow, or do you want to look at the rates? So however my mind is, however I'm working this, and what stage I am in my journey, I can go to the right place. There's drop down means key task information all accessible from this page. It's a really easy calculator. It's based on big blocks. I can thump with my big thumbs mostly as far as possible. It's got the comparison is done as a carousel. Comparisons are hard on mobile. They just are, and we'll see a good example from another industry in a moment, but they just are. But this is a reasonably good way of comparing something that's got a lot of things. I mean, you're comparing monthly payment, initial rate, product fee, and a lot of this is mandated. Both the Financial Services Authority require you to show consumers. So it is hard, and it's not the case you can just get rid of half of it because you have to show it. But this is just a nice way of showing, okay, this is the key things. We're going to put the other products side by side. You can get rid of ones you're not interested in. You can clearly see there's something else to look at because of the way it's laid out. The same number, the same piece element is across. So as I can scan, I can go left, easy, and just see initial rate, so the same information is across. And again, it's particularly effective on the tablet. We're looking at the mobile phone here as it happens. But again, on tablet, this works nicely as well. So we actually saw this was getting the most success in terms of consumers finding the right product to suit their needs from this strategy. I mentioned that sometimes the best is from other markets, and this is a prime example. This is actually an example from OVO in energy. The best example we have in terms of matching needs, in terms of the scores that people are getting. You see very good scores here. 70% of people effective, 84% satisfaction, 9.3 confidence. So summary of plans viewable above the scroll when you've inputted your own details. The quote page very clearly shows us 3 different quotes. You've got visual cues at the dots at the top. You've got the sort of card sorting design. So there's cards essentially appear, labels appear behind the one you're looking at. Strong carousel cues. And again, this idea that as you swipe, the same information is on the same row. So if there's something you're particularly interested in, you can scan very quickly and see how the products compare. So this actually scores the highest of our comparison tools across the industries that we're looking at. Again, it would work quite effectively within financial services too, to enable comparison across complicated products. So that's looking at comparing the products and saying, well, actually, why do we think Tesco are doing so badly in terms of helping consumers find quickly the product that suits their needs? And you think you can see it's both navigation, it's content, and it's that comparison is just very, very unwieldy. So we're now just going to spend a couple of minutes looking at help and support. And this, again, is very vital for all of the products that we're looking at. And again, it's worth mentioning that we're not just looking at phone numbers or FAQs. We're looking at the whole variety of support that consumers need when they're going through the process. We look at live chat, we look at phone numbers, we look at contact us, we look at FAQ. Again, we look at advanced help and support, but we also look at help and support within the application form. We can't just abandon people when they're in the application. It's not, oh, great, they're in the application, let's let them get on with it. We really need to help them there too. And again, Tesco's really falling down on a number of these elements. Live chat, it's got an FAQ, but it's got problems with it, we'll see in a moment. And again, help and support within the form, not up to snuff. So we've got a site that's causing problems for consumers, but that's not helping consumers solve those problems. Live chat is really a standard in the market. We're getting to that stage now. This is probably one exception to what I was saying at the beginning when we're saying about fast, quick, actionable, get this done quickly to increase conversions. We appreciate live chat is not something you can just turn on tomorrow. But often we find that brands have access to it, but just aren't using it very well, aren't using it in the right places, aren't helping consumers with it. So often it's not the case that we're saying you just got to go and invest in it. We're saying, well, actually, let's think about how you can use it more intelligently to help consumers at the right point in their decision process. So this is, for example, this is Lloyd's Banking Group. We've got the Halifax, we've got Lloyd's. Obviously, the sites look very different. Again, it's not one look and feel. Sites look very different, but the approach to chat is the same. When you're in Journey, when you're on product pages, you've got the chat that appears at the bottom. Questions, chat with someone now. Proactive, do you need help? It tells users how long they're going to have to wait. So it says, we're searching for an available agent, you're number 1, and your average amount of time a customer has to wait. So you've got some sort of idea how possibly long this is going to take. How was it worth waiting? It then says, well, you're about to chat with Hannah. It gives her a name, but it also is very helpful in terms of what she can and cannot do. So she can't answer questions about personal accounts or give advice. You do not, and you should not, give us your username, PIN, information, etc., etc. So it's helping consumers saying, actually, if you have a question like that, this isn't the channel to use. This is a channel for sort of reasonably quick inquiries. We're not going to be able to help you with personal details. And again, then at the end, you can print the chat. Really helpful. Being able to save it would be helpful too. Again, not perfect. Being able to print is really helpful. Especially if you ask something a little bit complex. How do I access my account if I've locked out? How do I reset my password? Okay, I can now print those instructions for next time this happens. So very helpful in terms of that live chat, not just in it being available, but also in what it does and how it supports consumers and where it is. As I say, it's very much about getting the most out of your live chat investment. The FAQ, as I say, there is an FAQ on page. I mean, one of the first things we say to our clients is get those top FAQs actually on the product page. Keep people in journey if they have a question. The worst thing you can do is take people out of journey if they have a question, because a certain percentage of them will not come back. So in principle, having the top FAQ on the page is great. The problem is then when we come to more information, so people are looking at all frequently asked questions, takes us onto into a completely different page. It doesn't open a new browser, so it's very hard at this point to get back to where I was. I can't just go back to my browser page. I've been taken out of journey completely. I'm also now in an environment that is very much community, search your community. Okay, I didn't want community, I want frequent asked questions. I want answers from Tesco's. I don't want answers from other people at this point. There's no option to filter from answers from just Tesco Bank, which I think for many consumers is going to be quite unnerving. I don't just want to go and talk to random people about my savings account. I want to ask Tesco a question. I don't know what best match means. When I look for savings rates, there's no obvious page that says go here for rates, and I say what does best match mean, so you decided this is the best match. So it's quite unnerving at this point to try and find perhaps reliable results within the FAQ. And I say, as a consumer, I'm also completely out of my journey now. I'm away from the page I was. You're taking me out of journey. I haven't found an answer. I'm going somewhere else at this point. I'm leaving. And obviously the other issue here is the applications are not mobile friendly. And again, the FAQ here links to this community page, links to an insurance page, so it's not even relevant to the product I'm looking at. So it really doesn't work within the application at all. So some examples of how other brands are doing this a little better. So Santander, for example, this is the mortgage application or decision in principle, mobile formatted, mobile friendly. It has a way of saving very simply as you go through. If you automatically auto save options as you progress, and you can come back very easily. The correct keyboard appears for input fields. You're amazed how many times this does not happen, where it's a data box and you get the letter keyboard or vice versa. But you really need to make sure that the right keyboard appears for input fields. Consumers can jump between fields at each time, so there are a long list of questions going on here, but I can jump between them and change them. If I can just go back and say, oh, did I get my income correct? Did I get that? I just need to go check, did I get my date of birth correct? So very simple and easy to progress. And as I said earlier, very much about looking at keeping users in journey when they are got questions. And this is a good example. Again, it's a completely different industry. This is energy again, but again, a different territory. This is Energy Australia. This is a really nice way of keeping users in journey, but helping their questions, answer their questions. So this is a slide over that appears, when you ask for help. It gives you the options, so have us call you, you can call us, there's live chat, but there's again sticky FAQ, which are appear in this slide over. So all the way as I go through this FAQ and read more about the questions that I have, and I delve further into the FAQ, the journey that I was already on is there too, is behind this slide over. So if I close this FAQ page, I am still in the journey I was in. I'm on the application page, I'm in the journey, I'm trying to find a product. So I've solved my problem, I'm straight back into what I was doing. I'm distinctly less likely to leave at that point because I don't have to go back to the beginning and figure out where I was and start the whole journey again. I'm very much in journey. I've solved my question, I've come back again, I'm going to get this done and go and do something more interesting instead. Because changing energy providers isn't much fun either. And the last example I have is very much this is something slightly different. Again, we're seeing a few of these around. This is quite a nice example of a chatbot. So it's basically guided FAQs, helping users use the FAQ but in a slightly more chatty, perhaps more user-friendly way. So it answers consumers' questions in real time. You type your search. It directs you to the FAQ if relevant. It gives you phone numbers. It gives you a brief answer to your question. So again, keeping consumers engaged, helping them find the right solution to their problem. Is it a phone number? Is it an FAQ? Is it to ask another question? What's also interesting about this is it remembers that next time you come back. If I go, I perhaps get a car insurance quote. This is more like to be, this is insurance. I get a quote, I come back, I've asked a question, I come back. The chatbot remembers the question I asked last time. So again, if I can continue the conversation, I am in journey, and it just makes my life very much easier to carry on with the decisions and the journey I've made. So there's been a bit of a whistle-stop tour through some of the pain that Tesco Bank are experiencing in the UK financial services market. Despite having widespread brand awareness in retail, they are losing the vast majority of those who put them on the shortlist, particularly for mortgages and current accounts. And that is, I think, going to be very much driven by the poor experience consumers are having on the mobile site, from navigation of landing pages, people struggling to find products, struggling to find rates, really struggling to compare products, even if they do manage to get through to that page. Help and support aren't integrated into the content and application at all. If I have a question, I'm very much taken completely out of my journey. And also sort of micro interactions, CTAs, navigation, often very small. I'm navigating again with my thumbs in many cases, and it's just very difficult as a consumer to make sure I'm hitting the right thing. So as a consumer, I am frustrated in terms of I don't know where to go, the site doesn't do what I think it's going to do, I can't compare the products. So again, as we saw at the beginning, I might have put you on my shortlist, but absolutely I'm not choosing the brand as a final preference because I just can't find a product that suits my needs. We are very much out of time, in fact we're over time. So thank you for your attention. As I said at the beginning, there's so much more here. We've been able to zip through a highlight of these products, but we have research going on, very recent research into mortgages, savings, current accounts, insurance, car insurance, home insurance across the UK, Australia, Ireland, and other territories. So if you're interested at all in seeing some more about what we do, thinking about the kind of activation workshops we would actually be able to do for a particular brand, for you, what we would actually be able to do in terms of actionable insight, please do reach out. I'm rebecca.jennings@globalreviews.com. Yes, thank you very much for your attention today. So I'm rebecca.jennings@globalreviews.com, and I am the Principal Client Advisor here at Global Reviews. So thank you very much for your time and your attention, and I hope to hear from you. Thank you.